not going to talk for a very long time tonight because there's not much more I can say that God has not already done in your hearts and in my own. And so tonight I just want to give you something to go home with, to take home with, to take home with you, to share with someone else. Because so many times, we experience God. We go to church or we go to something, we go to a Bible study or wherever it is, and we experience something cool, and it just stays with me. I never share that. I never let someone else know what happened because maybe they won't get it, or maybe I'm almost, they're not, a believer or whatever, and so they just might not understand about tonight. But how do you ever expect them to understand if you don't ever share it? If you don't never let someone know what's going on in your life, if they never hear your story, how do you expect them to hear God's story? And so tonight, as we've already seen a couple people's stories, I want you to begin to think about your story. As you read the cards that Will and Elise wrote to share parts of who they are, what would your story look like? Because I would imagine it would look like a lot of the same things would go on. We'd have some main characters that we think about in our lives that have caused things to happen good or bad. We've had some people roll through our lives that we thought were going to be the good guys, and they turn out to be the villains. And we saw some people as the villains, and we thought, man, these dudes are horrible. And then they turn out to be way worse than we ever imagined. And then there's always one or two people that surprise us. In my own life, there's a couple of people that I know now, right now, that I can call, and they'll show up, and they'll be there. But the first couple of times that happened, man, that was a surprise. It wasn't the people that I thought and even expected to, but there's always a surprise guy in my story. There's always a surprise person in your story that shows up and does something that you never expected them to do. And we each experience moments where our stories can change almost instantly. Growing up, man, I remember reading these books that were, I think it was like choose your own adventure books. And you would read, and at the end of a page, it would say, all right, if you want to pick up the gun, flip to page 22. If you want to hide, flip to page 23. And you got to choose right then and there where the story went and how it changed. And immediately, because of your choice, things were different. And I think if we all look at our own story, we'll come to a couple of places where, man, one choice changed everything. And for most of us, there are a few different times when that happened. I'll tell you a couple of mine because as I started looking back, I was like, man, yep, there's right there, things changed for me. It was my senior year in high school. And before school, I would always sit in my mom's car. I'd warm it up for her because, I'm a good son. And that's just how I am. And so I'm warming the car up. We got a half day that day. I'm thinking about hanging out with my friends after school. And suddenly the car is parked like right up against the garage door. And my mom opens the garage door, and she waves for me to come in the garage. Thought, that is strange. So I get out the car, I go in the garage, and my mom says, what's in your pocket? And I thought, what's Mom know? Mom knows something. Because there was some stuff in my pocket I didn't want Mom to see. So I was slick. I reached in my jeans pocket, and I pulled my jeans. I emptied my pockets like this. And she said, nope. That pocket right there. She pointed at my jacket pocket that was zipped up. All right, so I unzipped it. And in slow motion, as I'm telling you this, I am seeing this played over in my mind. In slow motion, I unzip that pocket and I pull out 2 dime bags of weed and I hand them to my mom. You see, because what my mom didn't know is that I had just started kind of dabbling in selling drugs. And what's amazing to me when people share their stories, like if they sold drugs, and I'm sorry if this is you, but most people, when they tell stories about the times that, man, I used to sell drugs and we used to do this, they were always the biggest drug dealer in town. I'm sorry to tell you that was not me. I had 2 dime bags. I was hoping maybe to sell one and smoke the other ones with my friends after school. And so it was heartbreaking in the moment because as soon as I pull it out of my pocket, my mom began to weep. And she began to cry, and I looked and I saw the heartbreak on her face. And she said, no line, she said, I'm so scared right now that I'm not going to tell your dad because I think he would kill you. And she wasn't playing, and those are the words that she used. And I was thankful in the moment that she didn't tell my dad. But at that moment, something changed for me. I saw the heartbreak. I saw the disappointment. I saw all that. And in that moment, there was no more selling drugs for me. That was it. My little experience, my trial run ended right there because I couldn't take the look on my mom's face ever again. That couldn't be because of me. So that was it. I didn't get to be the kingpin of Kansas City or anything like that. I got to be caught in the garage. And here's what's crazy. I didn't even tell you this. Here's what's crazy. When my mom, asked me to come into the garage, and after I pulled the bags of weed out, she said this. She said, I was in there brushing my teeth, and God told me to come out here and make you empty your pockets. All right. Thanks, God. Appreciate that. So, because there was no way she could have seen, she'd had to have x-ray vision to see what was going on. It wasn't like I was in the car like, hey, wasn't nothing like that. Like I'm getting myself caught. It wasn't that at all. And so it was just crazy. That was one moment, man, I remember because I had some stuff lined up. And if this went well, then this went well, then maybe, my life would have been different, at least for a little while. And then there was another moment, man, probably about a year and a half later where I'm out with my cousins, we're hanging out, and this was my story. Every weekend we would just go party, and we would go get high, we would go drink, and we would go get into trouble. And one particular weekend we decided to do our thing, and we're hanging out, and at the end of the night, whenever there's a fight, most people are like this. What's going on? What's going on? Who's going to win? I don't care. Let's just see it. Let's just see. So they're looking. Well, a fight breaks out where we're hanging out at, and I don't even know how we got involved because it wasn't us. We were just watching, and somehow we got pulled into this situation, and by the end of the night, there was a shootout. And I remember going home that night and sitting in my house, and I thought, man, is anything that went on tonight, was any of that worth me losing my life? Was any of that worth me not waking up tomorrow? And in that weekend and in that moment, everything changed for me. The same people that were with me that night, my cousins that were involved in this, he gave his life to Christ on that Sunday. This was Saturday. He gives his life to Christ on Sunday, calls me on Monday, invites me to church for Wednesday. I give my life to Christ on Wednesday, and I've never been the same from this one moment. And all of that happened, to where I can point at these different things. And that doesn't mean that everything has always been great, because as you look at your story and as I remember my story, there were points in my story where I thought that no one cared about my story. I remember sitting wondering that if nothing changed for me, would anyone even miss me if I was gone? And I remember sitting on the couch wondering if anyone would mind if I didn't exist anymore. And some of us have felt that. We felt like our story didn't have any value. No one cared to be a part of our story, let alone read our story, and they didn't think that we were worth anything at all. And sometimes we simply felt like nothing, or pretty darn close to it. In all my years of talking with youth, we used to do this thing where I'd take some money and I'd crumple it up and I'd say, how much is this worth? And they'd say however much it was. And then I'd step on it and I'd mash it a little bit. I'd tear it a little bit and say, how much is this worth? And they would tell me how much it's worth. And then at the end of it, I'm like, well, who still wants it? And somebody would still want it because it still held its value. And I would say, you know what, that's what you are. You might feel like you're crumpled and things like that. But there comes a point in our story where we don't feel like $1 anymore. We don't feel like a $20 bill. We've been mashed up so much, we don't even feel like there's enough worth. We feel like this. Feel like a coupon. And there's nothing wrong with coupons. Most of my eating choices are determined by coupons. If there's choice A or choice B, and my wife happens to have a coupon for choice B, we go to choice B. But here's the thing. Coupons, if you get and take a look at coupons, the reason why we feel like coupons is because if you look, it's like this is worth less than 1/100th of a penny. it's not even worth what it's printed on. And we feel like that. We feel like this. We don't feel like a $20 bill, $100, $1 million. We don't feel like any of that. We feel less than. But can I share with you something about this coupon that you need to think about tonight? Is that this coupon says that it might be worth if you save $1 now, but if you play your cards right and you take it to the right place at the right time and you redeem it with the right person, that coupon can be worth way more than that dollar ever was. And so can I tell you tonight that God is in the business of redeeming lives. And so when you feel like you're less than, and when you feel like you're not valuable, when you feel like you're not worth anything, I believe in a God who says, you know what, just bring it right here and I can redeem anything in any part of your life. You just have to give it to me. It doesn't matter what your story is. It doesn't matter what's went on, how broken you feel, or anything like that. Let me show you how this works. If you have your Bibles, or even if you don't, I'm going to show you a story real quick as we get ready to close in the next 10 minutes. I'm on the clock. It's in John chapter 8. And Jesus says, it says this. It says, as he was speaking, this is Jesus, the teachers of the religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. And they put her in front of the crowd. Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? Now let me tell you what's going on in this story, because sometimes we look at these 3 verses and our minds don't take us back anymore. We're not kids anymore, and so we don't look at things and imagine how they were. But I want to tell you, this was a situation where you would have wanted to be at. Because Jesus is doing his thing. Earlier on, it says that early in the morning, Jesus showed up at the temple again, and he's going to start teaching. And it says that Jesus is posted up on the wall. He leans back to start teaching. And so the Jesus that I read about sometimes, he's probably kicked up on the wall like this. All right, y'all, let me tell you what's up. He was probably kicked back like that somehow, because Jesus was cool. And every time Jesus talked, man, people wanted to hear what he had to say because he talked different than anybody else. And he offered something that no one else ever did. So he's beginning to talk. And suddenly, he's interrupted. And not just interrupted, but there is a mob of screaming men. And not just men, these are religious guys, the important people of his day. And they are screaming wrong things. By that, I mean this. It says they threw this woman in front of Jesus and said they had caught her in the very act of adultery. This woman probably didn't have on hardly any clothes at all. If they caught her in the very act of adultery, they didn't say, go ahead, get your clothes, fix your hair, and then we're going to take you in front of Jesus. No. They snatched this woman up out of somebody's house and threw her at the feet of Jesus, yelling stuff at her, saying who she was, what she wasn't, what she did, treating her as if she had no value at all. Because really what they were trying to do was set Jesus up. Because here's the strange thing. They quote the law and they say the law says that this woman is supposed to die because of what she done. That's not what the law says. The law says the man and the woman get stoned. So I smell a setup. And I want to tell you tonight that we've all been set up. And this is the stuff that scandal is made out of. This is the stuff why you call Olivia Pope and you have her team show up and help you out. Now, see, some of you haven't caught on just quite yet. You need to check out some Scandal because you're going to be at the end of it like, turn on another one. I don't care if it's 3 a.m, turn it on. That's who? I didn't get it. We watch like an episode almost every night on Netflix, and so it's pretty fun. But this is the stuff that Scandal is made of because they are trying to catch Jesus slipping. The Pharisees are jealous. They hate Jesus, but they can't do anything because the people love him. So they give him a no-win situation. Because if Jesus says, hey, let's stone her, she's guilty of sin, they can go to the Romans and be like, hey, we're not allowed to kill people. Jesus talking about killing people over here. If Jesus says, man, you guys are dumb, get out of here, don't stone her, then all of the religious dudes are going to start ripping their robes in half and screaming blasphemer and all this other stuff, and they're going to have a reason to accuse Jesus. They can try to get him like that. This is all a setup. And during this setup, we're introduced to a character that, for me, is familiar. We're introduced to a woman that doesn't have a name. All she has is a label. All she has is a name tag that doesn't even have her name. It just simply has what she's done. If you have a Bible, if you'll notice the section title, if you look up a few verses earlier, it just says the adulteress woman. And all throughout history, this woman was never given a name, just what she's done. And see, we think about the times that Jesus was set up and how they did this, but there was a woman who was used to set him up. There was a woman who was treated as if she had no value and nothing worth anything worth saving because she was an adulterer. She'd committed sin. She was guilty. She had all these men yelling all these different insults at her, and they were true. It wasn't like she was pretending to be something that she wasn't. She was caught. She was guilty. And some of us have felt that sting. We felt that embarrassment, that shame, as I imagine she's trying to cover her face. She's trying to keep people from staring at her. And as they bring her in front of Jesus, she'd been set up. See, she had been set up just as much as Jesus had, just as much as we have, because we've all bought into labels. And I set you up tonight by handing you these and asking you to put your name on them or put some kind of name. And some of you bought right into it. You put a name, you put something else. And some of you were like, well, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do my own thing. And so you wrote a nickname, or you wrote this, or you wrote my name. You didn't even write your name, but you all put a label on. Just about all of us did. And we give labels to people, and we take them from people as if they are written in stone. I do it at church all the time. If I don't know somebody and I see them in church, or I'm trying to tell Don, who I was remembering this last weekend, I might just give them a nickname for what they was doing. So if they was in the front worshiping and it looked more like they was doing aerobics, I'm like, the aerobics class people in the front, them people. And I've labeled them quickly. And we all do that. We're taught in school about Alexander the Great, and we read about Attila the Hun, and we watch Winnie the, what the heck is a poo? And I'm just saying, I don't know what it is, nor do I want to be a poo, but we're accustomed to labels. And the fact that we wear them, but ours aren't as cool as that. A lot of times the label that people have given us and that we choose to wear say things like broken, or worthless, or lazy, or average, stupid, slow, not good enough, easy. On and on it goes. And we've allowed people to write things on our hearts just like this woman. And we felt like her. We felt hopeless. I know in moments of my story, I didn't see happy ending. I saw no hope at all. Much like this lady who's laying at the feet of Jesus, waiting for someone to decide her fate. But tonight, I want you to know that there's something that you don't know. There's something that I don't know. And that's what's true about you now doesn't have to be true about you later. I want you to hear that again, because what's true about you right now doesn't have to be true about you later. And I'm not talking about reading a self-help book and fixing yourself up and getting yourself all together. I'm talking about allowing God to take his pen and rewrite your story, to allow him to interject himself so that my story, your story, becomes our story, co-written by God, so that now I can see the destiny and be the person that he created me to be. That's how things can be different. That's how things can change. And what you don't know is that's what God is about. See, what you don't know is that you were made for so much more than what your life has ended up being right now. And some of you, this is something that you feel down in your heart each night as you go to sleep. As you lay your head on the pillow, you think, this isn't who I'm supposed to be. This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. This is not the story that's supposed to be written about me. Something's got to be different. But you've bought into labels. Because they're not easy to take off. They're not easy to shed, because as quickly as we take one off, we allow another one to be placed on us. But it can be done. God is able to change your story. He's able to rewrite it. There's no sin. There's nothing that you could have done. There's no label strong enough to repel the love of God. to keep his love, to keep his grace, to keep his mercy from changing and rewriting your story. You see, there's something that you don't know about red letters. There's something that you don't know about that red pen that marks up your paper that suggests you rewrite things and do things a little bit differently. But I'm going to show you the power of red letters. Because it's always been a mystery in this story of Jesus when he's being approached with this. What's he doing? What's he writing? The Bible says he just stoops down and begins to write. I think part of it might have been Jesus was just embarrassed for the guys. How could they do this? And he didn't want to look at the woman. He didn't want to embarrass her. He saw the shame that she already had. He saw all this. And so maybe he was just looking away and writing something on the ground to just bide some time. And they demand over and over an answer. Jesus, what do you say? We need a stoner. What do you say, Jesus? What's going to go on? What are you choosing to do? And eventually Jesus does something for the woman that he's willing to do for you and I. He stands up to the accusers. And here's what his red letter said. Whoever among you has no sin, cast the first stone. And can I tell you tonight that he's more than willing, because I imagine as the story plays out, that Jesus put himself in between the woman and the men ready to kill her. And I believe with the same step of faith that he will step in front of our accusers. He will step in between those that would love nothing more than to see our life end and nothing more than to see our story end just like this, that would love nothing more than to place their label on you permanently. But his words carried much more weight, because in this quick word that Jesus gave, he just reminded them and let us all know that this woman has value, that you have value, that I have value, and that the only person to say that they don't is perfect. And he didn't say that she deserved to die. He said she had value. He said that we've all sinned, and conscious, and the Holy Spirit began to deal with these men. And as they began to play back in their own minds, maybe the stuff Jesus wrote down were their sins, were their mistresses, were on and on and on. And whatever reason, suddenly they begin to hear thuds of the stones dropping to the floor. And Jesus turns to the woman and he simply says, "Woman, where are your accusers?" And she looked around. There are none. And he said, "Man, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin anymore. Go and sin no more." Here's what's cool about what just happened. Jesus addresses her as woman, not in a degrading sense, but the term that he used is a word that you would use for a wife or ma'am or madam, immediately offering her respect that these men never gave her. Immediately placing value in her that these guys tried so hard to take away. In that moment, he said things can be different. I just want to propose something to you. What if instead of Jesus writing about these men, because no one knows what Jesus wrote, and I'm not saying he did this, I'm just saying what if? You know, there's a lot of conjecture that said that he wrote these guys' stuff. What if instead of that, he wrote her name on the ground and he began to write this woman's story in a way that she's never seen it before, in a way that gave her hope and life and a chance to be someone different, a chance to experience a rewrite from Jesus Christ, a chance to do something different and be someone that she maybe dreamed of but never thought could be possible. Maybe that's what he did. Because his red letters gave her a choice. Go and sin no more. And that's the key for us tonight. That's the key for you. It's the key for me. It's what will you choose to do? What will you choose to do? Will you choose to be the same person, or will you choose to allow the God of the universe to take his pen and begin to rewrite who you are in your story? You see, so many times we get caught up in the stuff, the labels that we came in with, the stuff that people said about us. Can I tell you that when God began to speak to Moses in the wilderness, he didn't see Moses as the murderer of an Egyptian. He saw the potential of a redeemer of an entire nation. He doesn't see you for the faults and the things that other people see you as. He sees you for who he created you to be. He sees the destiny that he already placed inside of you. He sees the hope that he is offering. He sees you differently than anybody else. It doesn't matter your story. It doesn't matter any of that. Jesus is offering this, that just because everyone says something about you and believes that it's true, doesn't mean that it is. Just because someone says something and they believe it about you, it doesn't make it true. The red letters is what makes it true. The power of the rewrite is what makes it true. You see, we see this in the disciples. We saw this with Moses. We see Jesus saying things to the disciples when they weren't incredible, when they weren't amazing, when Peter was still stumbling around. Jesus said that he was a rock, and by the end of his time with Jesus, he was. Your story may not be amazing now. It may not be incredible now, but I promise you it can be. I promise you it can be, that the God that I serve has the ability to rewrite your future just like this.
Waiting for you, be my rescue. Find me and bring me out alive. I will surrender back to the start where you found me. I give you my heart again. Take everything, I'm all I can bring. I'm coming home again. Savior, save me. Darkness, leave me. Healer, burn away this pain. Hold me, I'm a fire, not a flame. Back
So in closing tonight, just want to offer you a chance at a rewrite. And we had an amazing time during worship that God spoke to a lot of us about who you were. And he asked you to move, to make things happen, to begin to ask for something different, to begin to physically move, to show that you are willing to be who he wanted you to be, to get something different, to get a different result. And so tonight I want to offer you a symbol for you to take home with you. And it's a red pen and a fresh name tag. So that as the voice of God speaks to you, your destiny, who you are, who he's called you to be, and on it goes, that you can find a time to allow him to rewrite your story. You can write a word, a gift, what he's calling you to do, whatever it might be, and you can place this on a mirror or on your dresser or in your car, and you can keep this pen as a symbol of the ability for God to rewrite your story and my story. So Lisa's going to sing for just a minute as we close tonight, and you can either come to the front and grab one of these, spend some time in prayer about it, grab this, take this home with you. We're going to offer them during the happy hour if you forget or you don't get a chance to get up here or something like that. But tonight, I just want to challenge you. I just want to allow you something different. God wants to rewrite your story, wants to take it from your story, my story, and make it our story. His and yours. So will you allow him to do that? Will you allow him to do that? Just want to thank you guys once again for coming out tonight. And just to remind you this, that don't let your story just stay only you being the only person that knows it. We're going to post these stories that we've seen tonight on YouTube and Facebook. And I just want to challenge you to let people know your story. How did your story end up being our story? What hope do you have that you can offer to someone else? And why in the world aren't you doing that? Why would you hold on to that as if it was something that only you can hold on to? Why wouldn't you offer that same thing to someone else?